Resuming debate. Reprise de débat. Honorable député de Laurentides, Labelle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The curiously introspective SO 51 requires us to contemplate the standing orders here today. And with apologies to interpretation services, I have a lot to say on them. As a member of PROC and as a perennial procedure geek who started watching CPAC around when starting high school, I am following this debate with even more interest than my normal enthusiastic self. I want to go over some of the changes that have already been proposed by PROC in our recently tabled interim report on moving toward a modern, efficient, inclusive, and family-friendly parliament, and then discuss some other ideas. A good deal of what we discussed in our report does not affect the standing orders directly, and I encourage anyone interested in the workings of this place and the impact on your families and personal lives to take the time to read through the report and perhaps provide guidance to your friendly local PROC member on what direction that study should take going forward. In PROC's 11th report, we made a number of recommendations and had a number of discussion points. 3 of those recommendations and 3 of those discussion points are directly relevant to the standing orders. The first 2 recommendations are related to the standardization of vote times to ensure predictability and efficiency. That House leaders continue, whenever possible, the informal practice of holding deferred recorded divisions immediately following question period, and that House leaders, whenever possible, refrain from holding recorded divisions any later on Thursdays than immediately following question period. And the third recommendation is that the Speaker table the House calendar each year prior to the House's summer adjournment. That is not always easy, of course, but it is an aspirational goal worth pursuing. We also felt as a committee that it was important to look at ways of limiting the number of consecutive sitting weeks. We all know from our pleasant experiences this spring that 4+ sitting weeks in a row really sours the mood around here, especially when we are here to midnight every night. But there is a lot of work to get done, and we are a remarkable parliament for our inefficiency in getting through legislation. Not the kind of accolades I believe we are looking for on the world stage. To get there, one of the key items we discussed at length but did not really get anywhere with is the concept used in other Westminster parliaments of a parallel chamber. That is, a voteless chamber where items can be pre-debated. Our upcoming move to West Block and subsequent move back to Centre Block certainly creates an interesting opportunity to retain two fully functional chambers. The fate of Friday sittings was also a contentious debate, and one I would like to see my colleagues soul search on. How colleagues we make this place more efficient so that we may spend more time in the constituency. The last, of course, is decorum. While we did not come to any conclusions, I personally find the new tone of question period, with the government side at least, generally keeping calm and positive, to be constructive to be positive, and I would invite the opposition members to follow suit, at least experimentally for a while, to see if it improves the overall tone here. I cannot be the only parliamentary enthusiast who always found question period the least, not most enjoyable part of the day's proceedings, regardless of who is in power. Decorum is a cultural, not regulatory issue. It is up to us to fix. There are few of us who have ever actually read the standing orders from cover to cover. I have, on more than one occasion, and find them fascinating. I may not fully grok them, but I am certainly trying to. Standing Order 4 does not have a mechanism to deal with the acclamation of a speaker, for example. When Bill Blakey was Dean of the House, he presided over the unprecedented acclamation of Peter Milliken. I remember watching it on television. He observed that there was no process to deal with this, and that the House could do many things with unanimous consent. But what would have happened if a disgruntled member had denied that consent? And for that matter, there are several instances where unanimous consent is required for absolutely routine things that should not need to go to a question. Standing Order 7 Sub 1.1 has some curious wording around the assumed election, but not really, of the Deputy Speaker. Sub 2 has contorted wording designed to ensure that the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker between them speak the 2 official languages. Sub 3 requires a Speaker to be elected to replace one who leaves during his term, which is inconsistent with how that person got there in the first place. Standing Order 11 permits you, Mr. Speaker, to punt someone from this room. I would encourage you to be unshy to use that power, or to become blind to disruptive members, as Speaker Milliken has done, regardless of party. But those powers should perhaps be expanded on. What value is kicking someone out of this room into a press scrum? What more tangible resource could perhaps be available? Standing Order 17 requires us to speak only from our own seats. I would personally like to see, for purely practical reasons, the members of the House leadership team of each recognized party be permitted to be recognized from any seat allocated to their party during regular debate. Standing Order 23 declares bribery a high crime to be dealt with the utmost of severity without providing for any type of process to do so. Standing Order 28 Sub 1 says we cannot sit on Dominion Day. Dominion Day was replaced with Canada Day back in 1982. I was 1. Standing Order 37 Sub 1 permits you, Mr. Speaker, to punt a question deemed not urgent to the order paper, but in all my years of watching, I've never seen that actually happen. Chapter 6 of the orders deals with the process of debate. I think it is worth considering changing the structure of 10 and 20-minute speaking slots with questions and comments to be 15 or 30-minute speaking slots, of which up to 10 or 20 minutes can be used for speaking, with the totality of the unused portion being left for questions and comments. So, for example, if I only speak 6 minutes out of my 10, which for me happens more often than not, I will have up to 9 minutes of questions rather than only 5. This will lead to shorter and more candid speeches and better debate afterward. Standing Order 68, sub 3, has an ironic quirk of Old English, stating that bills may not be tabled in imperfect form in English and incomplete form in French. Standing Order 71 also has a typo, stating that every bill shall receive 3 several readings, rather than 3 separate readings, or just 3 readings as it says in the French. Standing Order 87 deals with private members' bills. When a member of Parliament has been here for several elections and has never had a chance to bring a PMB forward, and another one comes in and has to get a PMB on the order paper before figuring out where the washrooms and center block are, the system may be somewhat broken. I propose for discussion that the PMB lottery be rethought to become fairer. At the start of every Parliament, all re-elected MPs should retain their place on the order of precedence. Those returning MPs not on the list because of being a minister, parliamentary secretary, or speaker would come next. New MPs would then be added to the order of precedence in the current manner, and MPs from the previous Parliament who had an opportunity to take their bill through the process would be added to the end of the list, again on the same process. And all MPs should be able to trade with all other MPs anywhere on that list. All MPs then would have an equal chance to propose a private member's bill without the peculiar bias against people who just can't seem to win a lottery, and without throwing a new MP into a situation of having to write and table a bill before learning how this place works. I would also like to visit the issue of royal recommendations at some point. Standing Order 128 allows the House to be called back at 1 p.m. on a Wednesday to deal with a report from the Standing Joint Committee on Regulations, to which I say, really? Standing Orders 129 to 147 deal with private bills. That used to be how to get a divorce in this country, but while the Senate still uses them, on the Commons side, there has not been a private bill for many parliaments. Could we not drop this altogether? And finally, Mr. Speaker, Standing Order 158 permits the Sergeant-at-Arms to detain a stranger for misbehavior in the chamber or gallery, and may not release them without an order from the House. I do not know if this building contains a jail, but this is certainly an interesting legacy item. What is the real-world impact of this? Now, getting off standing orders per se, why, Mr. Speaker, must bills die in the Senate when the House is dissolved? Could a Senate not continue dealing with bills already before it, simply sending back the version they passed to the new Parliament for concurrence? Private members' bills especially would be far less prone to untimely death. On other topics, I believe it should be inappropriate for any member to refer to the official language spoken by another member in the House of Commons, in the same way that it is inappropriate for a member to refer to the presence or absence of another in this House. Chapter 13 already guarantees all members can speak in either official language, but I would go further and make it against the rules to refer to the language another member actually chose. There are quirks in procedure and practice that are not necessarily in the standing orders, such as the entertaining, when shall this bill be read a second time? At the next sitting of the House, amid catcalls of now and never. This is an artifact from a change more than 20 years ago, and there are no doubt several of these bugs where not all consequential changes were properly made. I suspect the need for the agreement of the House for order paper questions to be allowed to stand is another such artifact, and there are surely more. I would also like to see the clocks in this chamber be replaced with synchronized digital clocks, which can be controlled by the table and reflect the apparent time in the House as well as the actual time. So when we see the clock agrees. In fact, until we have integrated information systems in our desks, which is another long-term point we should at least discuss, I might go so far as to suggest 4 clocks be visible to all members in the chamber. The time, the perceived time, remaining speaking time for the current speaker, and the actual time the House is expected to rise today. But while we are at it, why do some events prolong the day and others do not? Is there any rhyme or reason to it? Or could we perhaps revisit what does and does not make the day end at, say, 6:48 p.m.? And of course, I would like to see chamber seats that don't tear our pockets, which happened to me again last night. And, and let me take this opportunity as a former staffer to call for the return of the one-stop shop, which provided for a different kind of standing order. Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, I had a group of around 20 people visit me from their retirement residence in Mont-Laurier, and at 3 p.m., security kicked them out of the group visitors gallery above you. Mr. Speaker, as a fundamental principle, I do not believe that behaving members of the public should ever be asked to leave the gallery during a sitting. If anything, the public should be encouraged to watch our debates rather than question period, to participate more meaningfully in our legislative process. Mr. Speaker, Standing Order 51 provides us this wonderful opportunity to get into the weeds on the standing orders and to remove relics, artifacts, and cruft that no longer need to be there. And I look forward to continuing to hear the thoughts of my colleagues and to discussing them back at Proc. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments. The honourable member for Langley, Aldergrove.
Thank you to my honourable member across the way and his speech. I have a question for him regarding SO31s. SO31s are an opportunity under the standing orders for a member to make a one-minute statement, and it's quite diverse in what that statement can be about. It could be about somebody reaching 100 in their riding, or it could be something that's very important to them. Today, during the 15 minutes prior to question period, during those 15 minutes where SO31 statements are made today, we had the member from St. Albert, Edmonton, make a statement, and it was regarding Ellison Azar. She's a Canadian. Her 4 children were kidnapped by the husband and taken to Iran. The response from the minister was to interrupt the member and to use gestures in the House. So my question to the member, is that type of, is that appropriate? Would he condone that, or should that be discouraged in this House?
Honourable Député de Laurentides-Labelle.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for the question. I was not on that side of the House. I did not see or hear what happened. I only know that there is a subsequent debate which was a little interesting, I'll call it that. I think it's important that when we have a very serious debate like the one we're having today, we keep partisanship out of it. And I would appreciate all members being able to do that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question et commentaire. Honourable Député de Sherbrooke.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, et je remercie mon collègue pour son discours et sa passion sur le sujet. Je me demandais qu'est-ce qu'il pensait parce que c'est beau de parler de tous les règlements, mais il faut savoir que une motion peut être adoptée et qui contient la mention « Nonobstant tout règlement et procédure de la Chambre ». Donc ça, c'est adopté régulièrement des motions de ce genre-là. Donc qu'est-ce qu'il pense de notre discussion aujourd'hui pour parler des règlements alors qu'avec une majorité simple, on peut carrément outrepasser tous les règlements et les procédures de la Chambre simplement en adoptant une motion?
Honourable Député de Laurentides-Labelle.
Merci, M. le Président. Je ne suis pas sûr de ça. Moi, je comprenais qu'on pouvait juste faire ça sur une motion de consentement unanime. Je ne suis pas sûr qu'on peut le faire sur une motion à vote nominal. Je veux clarifier, puis on pourrait parler de ça à l'extérieur. Mais pour moi, je vois ça comme utile important dans les consentements unanimes, mais je n'apprécierais pas trop que ça serait utilisé dans un vote normal. Merci, M. le Président.
Questions and comments. The honourable member for Saskatoon-Grasswood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks to the honourable member for his comments here this afternoon. This is one of the icons places in this country. I would not like to see digital clocks put in here. When you walk in here, this is a place of history. And I love the way it is situated here today. I think we can all see the clocks and say it's 11 minutes after 4. But my comment to the minister, to the colleague is, he's right on the private members bill. I was a first-time MP in October, and I won the lottery, and then all of a sudden you got to do your work. So I do agree about the private members bill. You know, when you're here for the first time and you get an early slot, it is a little bit onerous.
Member for Laurentides-Labelle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will try not to note too much irony in the member saying his comments with an electronic earpiece with an LED on his desk and a microphone. So I think and also I should note that was televised, which was a technology that did not exist when this building burnt down and was rebuilt. Mr. Speaker, technology does move forward. I don't think that advancing to 1960s technology or the clocks is too much to ask. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments. The honourable member for Coast Bay, Central Notre Dame.
When he started his speech, he described himself as a geek, and I thought that was a bit harsh to call yourself by that. But after hearing the entire speech, I think I affectionately call him a geek. I think I'd have to do that. I also had the pleasure of hiring this guy a little while ago. He's part of the reason why I'm standing here too. The reason I want to ask him about some of the things he brings forward. One that I think should be seriously looked at is the idea that you don't get dropped from a list as we come back here when it comes to private members' bills. Because we have heard time and time today about people wanting to put something forward on behalf of their constituents or something that they feel strongly about and never get recognized. There are people here 20 years that never even get close to that sort of thing. So I hope maybe he can expand on that. But may I throw in something else? He'll tell me if I'm wrong. He's so good at this, I'll believe him. But I would like for him, should that members, instead of putting all members in a list, put the ones who only have bills introduced. Thank you.
La députée de Laurentides-Lebel, brève réponse, s'il vous plaît.
Interesting idea from my old boss, Mr. Speaker. The idea of having to only be on the order of precedence if you already have a bill would certainly force people to think about it right from the get-go if they actually want to get involved in the process. In the way it'll actually work, I'm not sure how it would go, but it's certainly an idea I'm looking forward to discussing at PROC along with the other 4,716 or so we've gotten today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.